Today we're looking at the first of 3 sessions, looking at Project Hollycroft and how we can utilise BIM for renovation purposes. So I'll begin the session. I'll just start, got a bit of a PowerPoint, and then it's on to a sort of live demonstration itself. So here we go. My name is Ken Good from GRAPHISOFT Connect, and I'll be doing the presentation, obviously. Got a little bit of an outline of what's involved here, but just to kick things off, actually, a little bit of interaction with everybody. This session is all about utilising BIM for renovation purposes. So what I actually have is a bit of a poll to just ask everybody how much work you do actually involves renovation work. And renovation could be refurbishment, could be extensions, could be anything at all, really. So quite interestingly, the results show 40% of the attendees have up to 3/4 of their work involving refurbishment, renovation, or retrofit projects. So fairly standard, 7% none and 7% all of the work is refurbishment. It's kind of to be expected. There's probably about 50% of the work we see these days involves some sort of refurbishment, so slightly higher than normal. But what we're going to be looking at today is how we actually model the existing building. And there's 2 sessions. Today's session obviously is this one at the top here. It is Friday. We'll be doing another repeat of the session on Monday for another batch of users. And then later on in the presentation, I'll tell you about the follow-ups and when session 2 and session 3 are, etc. So the content for today, first of all, we're just going to be looking at what the definition of BIM is, a little bit about GRAPHISOFT Connect. Then we'll look at the ArchiCAD interface, which we'll be using to provide the BIM platform. And then we'll be taking a look at the actual existing model that's been done to produce Hollycroft. Part 2 that we'll discuss towards the end is how we then actually do the renovation work. So today's setting the groundworks, part 2 is the renovation side of it, and part 3 is how we then pull everything together for the documentation, collaboration and coordination of that project. At the end is a Q&A session. So the first thing we're talking about is just what is BIM, and really the first thing to clarify is BIM is not a software product. We're very often phoned up and asked, can I buy a license of BIM? There is no such thing. BIM is not a software product. There are BIM authoring tools available. ArchiCAD is one of them. BIM, as a definition, and we could do another poll here, but it gets way too complicated because everybody thinks of BIM in different ways. But BIM is actually 3 separate things, separate but linked. So the first instance, there's the building information modelling part of the process. And this is the business process that allows everybody in the project to have access to the same information at the same time through interoperability between technology platforms. And I'm kind of reading the definition here because it doesn't quite trip off the tongue, but that's a sort of industry definition of building information modelling. The next part is the actual building information model itself, and this is the output from that business process that produces the model in the first place. And basically it creates a virtual computer model of a project which holds all of the selected structures data about the asset. So the design, the quantity, the time, the cost, the as-built, etc. And again, I'm reading this off here because it's not exactly tripping off the tongue, but effectively, this is the process we use to put the model together. This is the actual model itself, so it's the digital database of information. And then we have ongoing from that, the actual building information management. And this is the organisation and control by using this information we've created in this database through the entire life cycle of the asset. And that can be from concept design to the end of life of the project itself. So it's your facilities management and all sorts of ongoing tasks on top of that. So just a little bit about GRAPHISOFT Connect. We were established in Birmingham 1994 with 18 years experience providing the BIM solutions, the coaching and the training services and everything that relates around these BIM products. We've got industry-proven methods of BIM implementation ranging from single licenses to hundreds of licenses, which could be across various different locations. Head offices in the Midlands, as you can probably guess, we have regional representatives. Right now I'm just outside of Glasgow. We've got other people dotted about elsewhere. And we support both the Open BIM and the Open BIM network approach to BIM and how we interact. So what we're going to be doing now is taking a look at modelling the existing building, and we've got the choice here. We're using ArchiCAD 16. We've got the choice whether we run this on PC or Mac, so if you don't mind, just another quick poll to get an idea of what platforms you yourself use. Normally we do these sessions, there's usually a kind of 50-50 split between Mac or PC, and going completely against the grain to what we normally find, which is more Windows people coming back to the Mac side of things. In this case, in this session, 81% of you are Windows users. As I say, ArchiCAD runs exactly the same on both PC and Mac, so there's not actually an issue. I was expecting more of a 50-50 split because we've done these sessions, different types of sessions, over the past 6 months, and everyone usually comes out, as I say, around about the 50-50 split, but never mind. As you can see, well, you can't actually see yet, but you'll see shortly, I am actually using a PC today. As I said earlier, it doesn't matter if you're Mac or PC, the software is the same on both products, on both platforms. And you have the choice, maybe you have a Mac at home and a PC at work, you have the choice to use either or. It's not a problem. So let me just switch out to ArchiCAD. And what we're going to be looking at is this model itself. Just before we get into that, I'll explain a couple of little things about the interface. First off, the screen's running at a reduced resolution for the broadcast. What we have in the work environment, various different pull-down menus that group together all the usual sort of commands. We've got a load of shortcut buttons. But the main components really to talk about are things like this toolbox down the side. This is what actually drives ArchiCAD. And you'll see it's broken down in architectural terms to things like walls, doors, windows, columns, beams, slabs, etc. These are just general descriptions that benefit us as humans, but a wall can actually be used for any particular purpose. So, for example, I created this Hollycroft, the stone plaque on the wall. That was actually made originally with a couple of slabs and then some objects to create the text, and then it was turned into a morph to create the plaque that you see here. And in fact, I might have even taken it from a morph. I have, and I've turned it back into an object. So you're free to use these really for any sort of purpose. These are, say, just labels that make them easy to understand. We also have this thing called the navigator. I'm going to be using this to look at the existing building shortly. This controls our views. There's various other bits that allows you to control the model. We have a number of different referenced worksheets here. We've got a number of elevations, we have some sections, and we have some stories. But in this tab we can then extend that further by attaching things like scales and pens and colours and layer combinations and various other options that give us more proper documentation rather than just the rough outline that we have here. So we'll be concentrating on this tab. There's also, towards the later sessions, this button here to do with the layout book, and then we have another one which is called Publisher, which we'll use to output batches of documentation. To begin with, what I'm going to do is actually look at some really, really basic modelling concepts. So I'm not going to look at the building just yet, but what you'll see here is a dirty big gap, and that's where the garage needs to be. But you'll see it's a little bit blank at the moment. So what I have, if I go to this view, this is a site plan taken from a 2D survey that's been used to build the Hollycroft model you're about to see. This is a DWG. It's actually been referenced in. One of the advantages of doing that is you can quite easily then crop these. So any of you that are AutoCAD users will be familiar with the term viewport. This DWG is effectively behaving like an XREF inside a viewport. So it references out and it gives me this option. So I can quite easily just crop out bits of this that I don't want. In fact, we can even do things like cut out random shapes like this if there's bits that I want to hide. So we're left with exactly the area I want it to be. But I'm quite happy with the whole thing because it is the site plan after all. So what I'm going to do is go and build the thing. So I've already prepared the groundwork, so you can see the driveway, you can see part of the rear garden, here's part of the front garden coming in, there's a boundary wall into the garden, and then there's the actual, forgotten the name of it, but the slab, the base that this garage is going to sit on. So to do this, I'm going to drop back to this view, but obviously it's going to be a little bit difficult to work on just now because I can't see anything. So this is where we start to use this thing we've got called trace and reference. And trace and reference, what it allows me to do is select any other view and set it as a reference. And what this has done is now switch on effectively a ghosted view of that site plan. But the other thing you'll see is the site plan was drawn where the building was running on a sort of pretty regular horizontal vertical axis. But you'll see here we've actually realigned every view so that we can then work with a horizontal vertical axis on the garage in this case. Some of the other things we can do is we can actually choose to fade this down, bring it back up. We can change its colour. So we usually go for something that's not going to be confused with other elements we're already working with. So I tend to go with a pale blue or a pale red because you can see some of the components of the building at the side here. These are much bolder, clearer colours. But what I need to do is put the garage in. So to do this, I'm going to use the wall tool, and I've actually got some favourites that I've set up. So I'm going to go for the garage wall, and this just sets me, I'm just keeping it really simple, 100mm concrete block, painted with concrete block. We're not building a log cabin, so I don't need to worry about that part of things. And it's going on to its own unique layer at the bottom. So all I have to do is actually OK that. And then to place the garage down, various different options, but I'm just going to draw a dirty big rectangle from corner to corner, and there is the garage structure. So if we take another look, well, let's actually take a fresh marquee through that area. So what the marquee does is just model this area rather than everything else. So you can see we have a garage. It's a very secure garage right now. But what we'll do next is just drop back, grab the roof tool, and we're just going to stick a roof on top of this. So we'll have one of these. Again, we're keeping this fairly straightforward. We'll have maybe, I don't know, 18-degree pitch. Okay, this one, and all we're going to do is choose, I want it gabled. So we're just going to draw this from here across. Tell you what, let's do it as one of these. We'll have a hipped roof. So you can see again when I look at it in 3D what it actually looks like. Now, there's a couple of issues with it. Again, we still can't get inside it, and again the roof's not exactly visible. But what we can start to do is play with this shape. So I can pick it up, grab one of these ends, and what we'll maybe do is say make this end gabled. So switch that one. What I'll do at this stage maybe is grab all the walls, and I'm going to connect these to the roof, and I'm going to trim out everything underneath. So you can see that now I've got a connection between the walls and the roof itself. So if I decide that actually what I want to do now is pick the roof up again, pick this edge, and decide to also make this one a gable, by doing so you'll see the walls automatically heal and repair. And if we were to do other things like maybe pick up the top of the roof, and let's spin around a little bit so we can do that again, pick up the top of the roof and maybe offset the position of that ridge line, again the whole thing tidies itself up and repairs itself. So we'll just undo again. The thing to do here is we could do with a bit of a door, because it always helps to put the car into the garage. I haven't actually saved a favourite for that one, so let's just go up to the top and search for garage. So what I'll do here is this is searched for garage doors in the standard library, but also online, available through the BIM components portal. So I could actually grab any one of these, bring them in and use them as well, but I'm just going to go with overhead garage door, so fairly typical component. I'll take the standard size and I'm just going to drop it in the centre of the garage and open it outwards. So what this does is, again if we go back to 3D, produce this sort of thing. And we can always pick it up, slide it up out the way, and we can have a look inside the garage and make sure everything's okay. There is a bit of an issue. It's clearly a double garage, but this door is not. So what I can do is always pick it up, grab this end, and we just stretch it out a little bit. So maybe we'll take it to 3.2 that way, and maybe make it 3.800 wide. So there we have, in fact, I can probably go to 4.200, something like that, and then I can always reposition it in the centre so it's all nicely lined up. And then to finish off, clearly what we need is some sort of car. So we'll just search car, it goes and searches, and there's loads and loads of different cars. Let's just have a little tiny micro car because that's definitely going to fit in the garage. Okay, that, and we just drop it in like so. And in fact, let's have a family of them. So let's take this one and drop it in that way. And if we go back to 3D, we can actually see the cars, which are incredible anti-gravity cars because I haven't quite got the height of them set properly. So let's just pick them up and pull them down so they're actually sitting on the deck of the garage rather than anywhere else. But the other thing you see I've done is I've actually switched on the rest of the model. So now what we can start to do is take a look at all of Project Hollycroft. So this is it in its entirety. You can see it's quite a detailed model. It's a 1920 traditional sort of brick-built English property. We'll have a look at some of the other bits and pieces inside in a second, but what I was going to do is there's quite nice architectural details in this building. You see things like there's quite an ornate chimney structure here. What I'm actually going to do is just drop out to this second file just to show you some of these particular bits. So what I've done is just a quick sketch render of the entrance, because you can see some of the detail that's actually produced round about there. And what I was going to do is just work through and show you how we actually create this sort of basic structure for the chimney itself. So this actually starts life as 3 separate components, these 3 things here. So the first one's a wall, then we've got a couple of slab elements. And what I'm going to do with them is begin by taking the wall and converting it into a morph. And what a morph allows me to do is actually play with the shape in far more freeform ways than any of the other tools. So I'm just freeform drawing this shape. What I can actually do is use push-pull to either extend this out or just push it back and remove it completely. So that's a very much exaggerated step, as you can see on the chimney itself. But then what we do is just drop back here, we'll just drag this back 2 meters, drag this one back 4 meters, grab the whole thing, 3D it, and what we can do now is turn these also into morph elements. And what that allows me to do is then select them all and actually create a connection between them. So what I can do is make a union, which effectively turns this into one single element rather than lots and lots of separate elements. So hopefully you can see that the idea is we carry on building this up, and that allows us to create this sort of structure with a number of stepped elements, and then we can cap it with the chimney pots, etc. The other thing I was going to look at was the fact that we can create custom door components. We have a library that has an extensive range of doors, windows, and various other bits and pieces. But in this case, this is an original 1920 door panel, and that doesn't exist in a 2012 library, unfortunately. But what we can do is, as we've done in this case here, actually model the door using the conventional ArchiCAD tools to create this sort of thing. So this is our timber door. You can see we have the main bits, the frame, there's the individual panels, the letterbox. If we go in nice and close, you can actually see there's the panes of glass, there's then the supports that hold that in place, and then we've got back to the outer frame of the door itself. So it means we can create really quite intricate and ornate door panels very, very simply. And once we've done it, all we literally do is take this and we save it as a door leaf. And here we can save this as door leaf demo. Typically I would give it its proper name and its sizes and everything else to make it easier to find, but I'm aware of the time as well. So what I've got here is just a piece of wall which has a regular door already placed in it. And what I'd like to do is take this standard door panel and change it now for the custom one. So all we do is we drop into the settings, here's our custom panel, and in fact here is one I made earlier. So that is the properly named 802 wide by 2022 high entrance door panel, and this is the one that I've just created. So maybe I'll take that one, okay that, and there you can now see there is our door placed in this wall. You'll see it has the various different colours, bits of glass. It's exactly as it looked like previously in the 2D window, but now it's an object. And the beauty of doing this is this remains a parametric door object, so we can do things like open and close it. But what we can also do, if we look at the settings, is continue to have access to all these other parameters that give us incredibly powerful parametric library objects. So I won't go through the whole thing because we can look at that at another time. But there's a custom panel. The final thing I was going to look at was the ridge tile. You can see there's a detailed ridge tile on the top of the roof. Here's a little tiny section of it. And all I was going to do was just show how we can actually change this. So if I go to the 3D window, that's what it looks like presently. It's been produced by what's called a complex profile. So what I can do is go to the profile manager, pick up the ridge tile, and we can edit the shape. And this will then apply to the entire project. So if I take this 2D and let me just grab that, and we'll put a bit of a, let's say, 60mm radius on each side. And we could do, whatever else you want to do here. So if I want to have some sort of kick out for some reason, We'll use a guideline to line up there. We can do this sort of thing, and we could do the opposite over here, I suppose, where we take this and we actually thin it down slightly for whatever reasons. But effectively, I've changed the profile. All I have to do is store that, close this down, and when the 3D window rebuilds, you can see we've now got the updated complex profile that shows the new ridge tile. So if I return now to Hollycroft itself, what we'll do is just take a look a little bit more at the main building. So if we start off with the ground floor, here is the ground floor existing plan. You can see it's now got the garage added, complete with the two wonderful little cars. The trace and reference is visible underneath. If I want, we can actually take that out the way, or what we could even do is if I want to check some of the details, we can use this to slide and wipe out the actual top view, so the existing plan disappears. So there's little things that I can see. I haven't actually created the gas meter yet, so there's little bits of work to be done there that we can use trace and reference to make sure we don't miss anything too important. But I'll switch that off for now. So I've got a ground floor. You can see the layout as it is. There is this existing extension that's probably 20, 30 odd year old, and what we're going to be doing in the next session is taking this and converting it from single story extension as it is just now, two-story extension to add a master bedroom with ensuite. And then what we'll also do, that's going to be created in this space here, what we'll also do is reconfigure this so that we have a new larger family bathroom, and this can be turned into a fourth bedroom or study. There's various other components in here. So we have different plans. We also have some elevations. These elevations are produced entirely from the model. You can see it's taken a little bit of time there because it's building up the garage, complete with the cars and the garage door and everything else. But the important thing to point out here is this elevation that you see here has been produced entirely from the 3D model. There's not a single 2D line visible in here. While I'm in this elevation, I can show you another little tip to do with the flashing. Some of the questions coming through relate to the flashing and how that's been created, so I'll give you a taster. It's basically been drawn on elevation, where we just create a 2D polyline with the Morph tool, which is to whatever shape we choose it to be. So just do a random shape like this. I can then go to the 3D window. Because I've drawn it in elevation, this actually aligns itself on the elevation itself. So what I'll do, first of all, is just pick it up, pick this surface, and what I'm going to do with it is use the push-pull tool just to pull it away from the screen, or away from the building by 20mm. What I can do with it then is just pick up the shape, pick up some point on the rear of it. I'm in drag mode, so let's move it along its x-axis, and we'll line it up with the back of this tile. So we're lining it up on the wall, facing outwards. So if we return back to the elevation, so you can now see this new piece of flashing. Now, in essence, the whole point of the BIM model is that if I modify the elevation, so I remove this from here, that automatically takes it out from the plans, any other elevations or sections, and also when I return to the 3D window, it's gone from there too. Sadly, the rear and the side elevations are nowhere near as exciting as the front elevation, but even then, you can see we've got some quite ornate details across the ridge tile at the top of the entrance area. And then we've also got exactly the same elevations, but produced in a colour set. And when it builds the garage, there we go, we'll take a zoom in, and what you'll see is, as well as having the colours, the textures, we've also got the shadows. And the shadows are controllable. We can set them for either a real world position, or we could actually just set them as they are here. They're on a sort of 45 degree to give us just a little bit of depth to the elevation itself. So we've got various elevations. There's also a couple of sections cut through the building. And we then go to the 3D views themselves. So take a quick look at these. There we have the front view of the building. Another thing to point out is this is an OpenGL preview of the window. It's not a rendered image by any means. It's just purely a view that allows us to easily run around the building and work with it. Got a roof plan. Take another look at the entrance, and then a view from the driveway. So that is an overview of what this model existing model is actually about, and a little bit of a taster about how some of the elements like the chimney, the ridge tiles, the doors, how these have actually been modelled. So what I'll do now is drop back into the PowerPoint, and really just to, before we go to the Q&A session, just to sort of talk about the next session, which is in 2 weeks' time. What we're going to be doing at that stage is, as I said, take the existing building as it is, we're going to extend the extension at the back to make it 2 stories, alter the layout of the second floor, first floor even, and look at how the renovation tools actually used to control those various stages. So that's coming up in the next session. So we'll talk about the design brief, the actual workflow for using the renovation itself, and then as part of that, the final session will also be discussed where we bring everything together, and again there'll be another Q&A session at the end of that. So that's effectively the final part of today's session. Thanks all for your time.